Marketing automations and workflows are absolutely a passion of mine. So when I received multiple questions this week on LinkedIn, YouTube, and even from private consulting clients about the fundamentals around workflows and how to create automations specifically for marketing for lead generation, I thought it might be a good time to do a little bit more of a 101 around workflows. Because what I'm noticing is that even amongst really smart, successful entrepreneurs and business owners, that automations and workflows can feel really complex, difficult, and technical until they don't. Creating workflows and automations is really just the process of taking your current systems, your current processes, and making them work without you, without any manual interaction. So if you can describe your current processes, chances are you can automate them. And to really take that a step further, this is becoming even more of a reality with AI. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create marketing automations that work without overcomplicating it. I'm also going to share when I do not recommend automating and, of course, mistakes to avoid. And I'm going to do this all in a very hands-on way, showing you exactly how to build it step by step. I'm Catherine Ferris. I've been working in marketing automation since 2009, helping small business owners, consultants, and marketing teams build systems that actually work. Now, today we are going to be working technically inside of the high-level platform, which is the platform that we prefer. It's the platform that we use with all of our clients. But here's the important thing. The skills and the understanding that I'm going to be teaching you today, that I'm going to be showing you today, those skills are transferable across all platforms. And I say that because I have worked in dozens of different platforms. Whether you're using HubSpot or Keep or ActiveCampaign or ConvertKit, no matter what you're using, even simpler tools like MailChimp, these skills will be transferable. There will be a few nuances on the technical side, and I'll try to point them out as we go. But overall, the general principles of building workflows and automations hold true across most platforms. So here's what I'm covering today: what marketing automations actually are, the 5 core pieces that go into every single workflow, a live walkthrough and demo of a simple lead magnet workflow that anybody can build, and then the common mistakes that I've seen over the years so that you can avoid them. And of course, as I go along and as I'm building this out, I'm going to give you tips and tricks all along the way, from email structure to lead magnet ideas. I'm going to tell you exactly what I tell all of my clients when I have a consultation meeting. In fact, I had some of these exact conversations just an hour ago with somebody that we did a full marketing audit with, somebody that needs to improve some of their follow-up and lead generation, some of their standalone practices, workflows, and automations. These are the tips that I share with everyone that I work with. Now, a quick side note before we actually jump into our tutorial: if you do not have a CRM or basically an email marketing system, if you don't already have something, I do 100% recommend High Level or Go High Level. I have an affiliate link down in the description where you'll get a 30-day free trial, and 30 days is plenty of time to figure out if this is the right platform for you, build a couple of automations, try some things out. And this doesn't just work for workflows and automations, it's also scheduling for your appointments as well as social media management. So this is pretty critical for every small business owner, every marketing team. If you don't already have these core features in place that I'm talking about as we're going through, or if you feel like the current system that you're using is lacking in some way, I definitely recommend High Level. If you're interested in getting those templates, you will also get those by using our affiliate link. And if you want to go a step further and actually have access to us for your tech support, then you can sign up for High Level through Marketex Engine, which is our agency account. All of those links are in the description. And of course, if you have any questions, drop me a comment or book a consultation. Let's dive in and talk a little more about actual workflows, automations, and of course, lead generation. Let's start with the absolute simplest definition, because sometimes I feel like the confusion or the overwhelm just comes from this point. The truth is, marketing automation is simply taking action when something happens. That's all it is. For example, someone fills out a form, something happens. Somebody books an appointment, something happens. A call is missed, something happens. Those are all automations. They can be extremely simple, or they can be more complex. Maybe the form has additional questions on it, and each one of those questions triggers a different action. But as you're getting started out, I would caution you not to overcomplicate this. Start with form, result, input, output, and make it as simple as possible. I would also suggest that you start by automating things that you have already done manually. And I do think that this is important. So you really do want to take your existing processes, those tried and true processes, and start there in terms of implementing automations. And as you build your business, as you build a scalable, automated business, I would encourage you to think of workflows as the entire system that you're building. It's not just a clever email follow-up. It's the email and the pipeline, an entire customer journey that is connected from attraction to lead generation to appointment booking and eventually to qualification and sales. You can build the whole thing from start to finish, but also don't get overwhelmed thinking you have to do that on day one. Let's talk about the 5 core pieces of every workflow, because regardless of how simple or how complicated they are, all workflows have 5 initial pieces. All workflows are going to start with a trigger point, some sort of starting point. Now, some workflows may have multiple trigger points, multiple entry points, but they're all going to be started with some form of action. That could be the form completion. That could be the appointment booking. If you have an organized system that utilizes tagging, that could be that a tag is added to a specific contact. In some cases, the forms aren't even filled out by the lead or the contact. Maybe they're an internal form filled out by someone on your team that then triggers a series of actions. We have clients that do this for when somebody becomes a new customer. They fill out a form in their own system for new customers, and that initiates a whole series of actions from there. They get a welcome email, they get a contract to sign, they get added to a pipeline, there's tasks that are added for people, and it's all triggered off of one form. And the thing is with these workflows to remember is that if nothing happens, if nothing triggers the workflow, it sits there dormant. So it is critical to understand that first piece. What is going to initiate the workflow that you want to build? What's the first step? What's the first action? What's the trigger? Okay. Next up in every workflow is the actions. And most workflows contain more than one action. There are some that are very, very simple and literally just contain one action. Somebody says, I want to opt out. The action is they're removed from all the other workflows. That's a very simple workflow. But in most cases, you have your trigger or your starting point, and then it goes into multiple actions. Those actions could include adding tags so that you can segment your list. It could include sending an email, which is very common, an email or an SMS text message. And it's probably the delivery, whatever the person filled out a form requesting, or confirmation that you received their form. Maybe they filled out a contact form. You want to send them a quick email saying, we received your message, we'll be in touch within 24 or 48 hours. And I do recommend always sending an email when somebody fills out a form. And this is because even if you take them to a thank you page, what happens if that page didn't load? Or what happens if they were in a rush and they just closed out of the browser? Then they didn't see whatever was on that message or in that page. So I do usually do both. I do a thank you landing page as well as an email. Some other common actions that happen within workflows are moving a contact to a pipeline based on whatever trigger that they initiated, or possibly creating a task for a team member internally or sending an internal notification. Hey, you have a new contact or you have a new lead. Those are pretty popular as well in terms of fairly simple actions. And the way you want to think of actions is that this is all the manual things that you would have done previously. So if someone typically sent you a message through your website, what's the manual thing you would have done in return? You would have emailed them back, or you would have sent them a text message, or you would have forwarded that email to your assistant, or maybe your assistant checked that email automatically. So all of those are the actions that you would build into the workflow, very simply. All right, the third core piece of workflows is conditional logic. Now, not every workflow includes conditional logic, but conditional logic is very powerful. It's the if-then statement. This is the piece where you can say, okay, somebody filled out a form to get an initial consultation. Well, if they already had an initial consultation, send them this email. If they have never had an initial consultation, send them this email. So there's some sort of indicator in the system that knows whether they had an initial consultation. And this is how you start to build a little more complex workflows, turn into smart logic, and really can help you streamline your processes and filter your lists and do things that are much more complicated. So I really dig into conditional logic a lot with our workflows in what's the next level we could take this to? What's the next thing we could do with this? It could be as simple as somebody reached a certain lead score, but because they're already a customer, I don't want to add them to the pipeline. Some other examples of conditional logic is somebody filled out the entire form. So now send them a thank you message. If they only got to a certain point in the form or survey, maybe send them a reminder. But as I said, I would not recommend going too deep on conditions if you're just starting to build your workflows. This is kind of like a V2 move. So if you already have some basic workflows and you're looking for ways to up-level them, create more advanced options, conditional logic should definitely be your next step. But if you're just getting started, do not overcomplicate this and save it for later. Item number 4 is goals. And I will add in the caveat that this is one of those things that's probably the most unique to each system, is how each system interacts and utilizes goals. For example, Keep has lots of goal options in their workflow and automation builder. High Level allows you to do one goal per workflow or automation. So you just have to remember that you only can pick one option, but there's still kind of some ways to get around that. And then some of the other builders, actually, the only way to set goals would be that when somebody gets a tag, you would have another automation that sort of moves them from one workflow to the next. Or you would set it almost as more of a condition. This email series can be sent to everyone that has not done XYZ. So sometimes goals can look a little bit different. And again, this might be a V2 move in building workflows. You might want to start with just some simple automations, some simple email reminders if this isn't something you're familiar with yet. And then finally, number 5 can often be mixed in with conditions and goals. And this is exit logic. And the reason I bring it up separately is because I do want you to think about this one separately. This is not somebody reaching a particular goal necessarily, or somebody that has already had some other condition within their contact record. But this could be somebody saying, I no longer want to receive these messages. So we have a process that we call selective opt-out. An example of this is when we are doing some sort of promotion and we don't want people to leave our entire list. We give them the option to click here if you're not interested in this particular promotion. So this isn't really a goal. This is not what we want them to do, but this should be seen as an exit condition. This means we want to take them out of this workflow. So that's a really good example of an exit. Another option would be someone gets to level 2 if you have multiple levels in your customer journey. If they get to level 2, you want to remove them from level 1. If they get to level 3, you want to make sure they're removed from level 1 and 2. Those are those exit conditions. So I bring those up because they're similar to the other two, but I just want you to think about them a little bit differently. So you have an entry point, which is your trigger. You have your actions in the middle, and then you have your exit conditions. And along the line there, you may also have conditional logic so that there's multiple branches and paths that people can take, as well as actual goals, like they did reach that next level. So those are the 5 pieces that I think of when I think about building workflows. And if you can map those things out, if you can map out your process of new lead, new prospect, new customer in those types of ways, and just sort of whether it be on a whiteboard, whether it be in an Excel spreadsheet, if you can map out those steps, then I guarantee you can build workflows and automations. All right, I've given you all the descriptors. Now it's time for a real life walkthrough. And the 3 simplest examples of workflows that I can think of automations that I think every business owner should have, are when somebody goes to your website, your contact form should be a workflow. When somebody fills out that form, they should get a reply, you should get a notification, they should get tagged. Eventually, they should be probably added to whatever follow-up system or process that you have. I also hope that your form has some indicator questions, maybe things that they're interested in or industry that they're in, or maybe their job title. That is a big resource right there. It's just your contact form, but it's a collector of information. It puts people into your CRM, and you should 100% utilize that. The next biggest thing that I think every business owner should have is appointment scheduling. You should have a way for people to book an appointment with you fast, simple, easy, no back and forth, no double booking, and it should be automated. And all of that can be done very simply in an all-in-one system like High Level. You can build your forms, you can build your calendars, you can set up your email marketing, all of your responses, your pipelines, all of that can be done. The other thing you can do is the third thing that I think every business owner should have, which is a lead magnet. A lead capture for your ideal client. If you know who your ideal client is, your ICP, ideal client profile, you should be able to identify some of their major pain points. And from that, create a resource that is valuable to them. This is what we call a lead magnet. Maybe it's a simple PDF download. Maybe it's a 20-minute training tutorial that you've done. Maybe it's some sort of a quiz. We've all seen these when we've gone to people's websites. If you've ever bought something from a retail store, when you put in your name or your email, you get 10% off or free shipping. That is a form of a lead magnet. And I believe every website should have one that speaks to their ideal client. So you put together a simple lead magnet, and High Level has landing pages so that you can make this look extremely professional. You have a landing page where you collect name and email on a form, also built in High Level. Then it goes to a thank you page where you deliver that product that you promised them, whatever that might be, the video, the PDF download. And then they are put into a workflow where you can send them an email, again, with that delivery content, and then you can follow up with everything after that. And that's the one that I want to show you today, as well as give you some tips, some time-tested tips on how to make lead magnets work a little bit better for you. Let's jump into High Level and take a look at a lead magnet workflow. Okay, as I mentioned, High Level is our platform of choice. And so here we are inside of High Level, or better yet, our version, Marketex Engine. When I come into High Level, on the left-hand side, I have a menu here, and I usually land on the dashboard. I am going to navigate down to automations, and you'll notice there is a ton of stuff in here. If you're not using High Level, let me tell you, this program will probably replace at least 5 of the current programs you're using for way less money. Let's go and take a look at automations. When you come into automations, you're going to notice a list of workflows, and you'll see the workflows look like this. And then you also can put workflows into folders, which look like this. What you can see here, I've done quite a bit of work around notifications, promos, challenges. D&D stands for do not disturb, lead scoring, and all of these things are pre-built. So anyone who uses Marketex Engine or anyone who uses our affiliate link down in the description gets these as templates. But what I want to do today is build something brand new from scratch just to show you how easy and simple it can be. Let's go create a workflow, and we're going to go start from scratch. As soon as I open this workflow, and I told you we are going to talk about AI, and that is the big box you're seeing right here. If you are in High Level, this is AI. And I will have to admit that over the last year, we have really focused on High Level, so I can't tell you yay or nay as far as whether the other systems and platforms out there utilize AI as much as High Level does, but High Level has it built into just about every single piece of the system to really help those that need a leg up, that need a hand, utilize the system much easier, and they're continuously improving it. All right, one of the first things I want to sort of harp on is naming conventions. When you're building workflows, I believe it is so important to have standard naming conventions. One of the things that I often do is I will put brackets and I will do LM for lead magnet. And that's what I want to work on today is a lead magnet workflow. So I'm going to say this is a lead magnet, and then I would have the name of the lead magnet, some sort of, whether it's an abbreviation or whatever it is, I would have the name. If this process requires multiple workflows, I would number the workflows so that when you're looking at them, they show up in order. So if this is step 1 for this lead magnet name, I would do something like that. And maybe this is the delivery. Opt-in or delivery is often the first step in a lead magnet. I'm interrupting this video to make sure that there is no confusion about High Level or about how to work with me. If you want to try High Level but don't want to waste months trying to figure it out, I have 2 very clear options for you to consider. If you're looking to build an agency or a SaaS business, head over to marketex.com/highlevel. By using our affiliate link, which costs you nothing, you will get the following bonuses. Our Marketex Engine Core Snapshot. This is all of the features that we install in every new Marketex Engine user account, and we're giving it to you for free as an affiliate. Our onboarding guides and access to our private community, an invitation to join our weekly live office hours, where I personally will answer questions and even share tips that I've learned throughout the week. And I'm constantly learning. There is so many new features and things to learn in this industry as a whole, not to mention within the High Level platform. Plus, we'll give you our additional templates, checklists, and migration guide. That's option number 1. Option 2 is if you are a business owner just looking to improve your own tech stack and you don't want to do it alone. You would like a trusted strategic partner in your corner that speaks the language, brings you time-tested automations, proven strategies, and up-to-date learning. Then go to marketexengine.com and book a consultation with me to learn more about our high-level agency, Marketex Engine, and joining our ecosystem. I'm also currently offering discounts on one-on-one consulting to any of our affiliates and high-level users. So whether you're building an agency or building a business, pick your path and let's drive results. Now, back to your regularly scheduled programming. All right, so that's an example of how I might name something like this. This way, all of my lead magnet workflows start with the same thing. And then everything for this particular lead magnet, the name is here. And if there's multiple workflows for this particular lead magnet, they're numbered so they show up in order. And you definitely want to come up with your naming conventions, and this should be company-wide. This is just the workflow. If I also have a landing page for this lead magnet, it should have the same type of naming convention. And then if I have emails for this lead magnet, they should be basically named the same. This is why naming conventions are important, is because then you'll be able to match all of these things together throughout the system. And you want to think about this in terms of tagging as well. I'll show you what I mean by that. But let's get started with choosing a trigger. As I mentioned, every workflow, the first thing every workflow needs is some sort of entry point or a trigger. If I click here for a trigger, you're going to see all the options that you have inside of High Level for what a trigger could be. And some of these include things like purchases or a subscription or even a refund could actually be something that triggers, if somebody gets a refund, maybe you then want to send them an email with a survey to find out why. Or maybe in a couple of months, you want to see if they found a better option or whatever it might be. If somebody has a contract or an estimate outstanding, that could trigger a workflow. Then we have courses, because High Level actually has a whole membership community and a learning management online course platform as well. You could have courses as well as membership stages actually trigger things. Opportunity, which is pipelines, affiliates, so you could have a new affiliate lead. Appointment statuses could trigger a workflow. These are all trigger options. You can build quizzes, surveys and forms submitted, which this is the one I'm really going for here, is the form submitted, because this is the simplest. So like I said, if you have a contact form or, in our example, a lead form. So we're looking for a form submitted. Now, if all I did was this, a form submitted is my trigger, I could stop right here. That means that every single form submitted, whether it's a contact form, lead magnet 1, lead magnet 2, every form submitted would trigger this workflow. So that's why you want to add filters here in High Level. In many of the other systems, when you're choosing your trigger, if you say form submitted, it's then going to give you a drop-down list of the forms automatically. High Level is one here that you could actually leave this blank. You could choose no specific form and actually have all forms trigger this, which could be good or bad. You just need to know that that's an option. So here we're going to say the form is, and then we're going to select our form. And I happen to have a previous example, which is lead funnel 1. So we will use that. All right, I've chosen the form that I want. Now I can further filter this. I can say like they agreed to the terms and conditions, or there was something on this form, a specific question, maybe the industry that they're in or something like that. So this is not just the lead form in general, but the lead form with a specific answer then triggers this. And again, that to me would be kind of like a stage 2. To start out, I would just say the lead form. So we're going to save this as a trigger. Then from here, the next thing I typically do, especially with a lead magnet, is I add a tag to say that this person, we're now into step 2 of building your workflow actions. And so I add a contact tag. And most of my stuff is going to have the same, so LM would be in the beginning. So I am going to name it exactly the same. And it would be whatever the name of the lead magnet is. That's what I would be putting right there. And I'm going to say add a new tag. And then even in the actions, and this is just a high level thing, I like to name my actions so that when I'm looking at my workflow, I can actually see very clearly what this action is. So now when I save my action, you can see what I'm building here. Somebody submitted a form. They are getting tagged as having submitted the form for this lead magnet. They are interested in this lead magnet. Now, all it does is in your CRM, somebody is now going to have a tag saying that they opted in for the new ebook, or that they opted in for the 5 tips to creating a lead magnet, or whatever the lead magnet is that they opted in for. That's all that's doing, which then allows you to pull a list at a later date. Later on, you might want to find out, okay, this group of people opted in for my lead magnet for lawyers, and this group of people opted in for my lead magnet for realtors. And that might be a differentiator about messaging that you want to send to 2 different people. Maybe you have an upcoming interview or a webinar specific to lawyers. Then you want to know who opted in for the lead magnet for lawyers, and you may want to retarget them with additional messaging. So this is part of the reason to have these tags in here. It also helps you if somebody becomes a client 6 months down the road. You can go back and look at their contact record and go, oh, the first thing they did was they got this lead magnet. Well, that's good to know. How many other people have gotten that lead magnet recently? Maybe I should look and see how many of them have taken actions. This might be a really high converting lead magnet. So this is just some of the stuff you can do with these tags as long as you're collecting the information up front. If you don't collect that information, it will be harder to make those decisions later on. All right, so they fill out the form. That's the trigger or the starting point. We add a tag. We still haven't actually done anything like send a message or notify anyone internally. And those would be the two things that I would do next. And right now we have no delays happening. So this is all happening pretty instantly. So we are next going to add an email. And you notice we can add waits, and that's what I mean by a delay. But we are going to add an email. And since I don't see that right at the top here, I am going to do a quick search, and it's going to be send email. Now, when I choose to send an email, I am going to have this be the delivery email. This is the initial, like the step 0 delivery email. I will just name the action as that. Like I said, that's a specific high level thing. I like to name my actions. Now, anytime you're building in these systems, you're going to see little screen tips for what does this mean. You can see right here, send an email to the contact. If the from name are empty, then it's going to use the default. Pay attention to these little lines, to these little screen tips, because these are what's going to help you figure out the nuances of your specific system. These are important. So I actually don't need to even fill in the from name or email based on that line right there. I know it's going to use my defaults. But you see, I have an asterisk here. I have to fill in the subject line. So I'm going to put in a good subject line. You'd probably say something like action required, or whatever the actual name of the lead magnet is, you might put right in the subject line there. And then I always fill in the preview text as well, or if there's some sort of special offer that's involved in this as well, you might want to list that there. And this comes to a very important point about lead magnets specifically. When you're creating lead magnets, the first email you send, the delivery email, will always get the most opens and the most clicks. So you really want to capitalize on this. You want to make sure you deliver what you said you were going to deliver. You also want to put any sort of next step in this email. You want them to book an appointment next. Make sure the appointment link is in this email. If they're downloading a PDF, I would also have a next step on the last page of that PDF that says, here's what to do next, and it's an appointment link. Be clear about what your next step is and put it in all the places that they're going to see it immediately. On the thank you page, on the actual item that they're getting, or in the video, and on this first email, because you are going to lose somewhere between 30 to 50% of your audience after this initial point of contact. It's almost universal. And it happens more with simple downloads than it does with courses or videos. Courses and videos, you get less opt-in, but they tend to be a higher quality, where quick PDFs and downloads, you tend to get more quantity and a lower quality, so less conversions. I hope that all makes sense. If it doesn't, drop me a question down in the comment. I'd be happy to answer it. Basically, what I'm getting at is email number 1, your delivery email, is one of your most important points of contact, most important pieces of real estate. Here, you can simply type in a text message, and you'll notice in high level, there are multiple options for sending an email. You can do a quick compose. You can do kind of a pre-designed template if you have those already, if you have pretty templates designed, drag and drop design. Or you could even start a brand new one from a smart builder. Sometimes it's just as easy and just as effective to just type a text email, especially if you know you're not necessarily going to be repurposing this later on, so you don't need it as a template. You would just type in your message. And you can use smart fields. And that is maybe another tip I would say here, is that the smart fields, custom fields here, if you put somebody's name in a subject line or a preview text, you actually have a better chance of them opening it, because people recognize their name and they may pause for an extra second on that email. And that might be a strategy you use in the first email, or maybe you use it in the second or third email to help increase the likelihood that someone's going to keep opening your messages, because this first email does have a high likelihood already. But that's what that looks like when you put it in. And every system that I've ever worked in has the ability to do this, to put in somebody's name. As long as you collected it on the form, you can put it in the emails when you respond to them after an opt-in. The only thing that will look different there is the way they put it. The setup of that tag or custom value might just be set up differently. This is how it works in high level. And you can always find it when you find these tags. So even here, I could do message to, and I could choose the contact's first name, or I could put in their phone number or their email. I could say, hi, Jane. I noticed that you are emailing me from blah, 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 or you put in a phone number of blah, blah, blah. Please confirm, right? So you could actually put in their contact information in here, which makes it very customizable and very easy to customize. The other thing, like I said, with High Level, they have AI everywhere. And so you notice right here, if you need help writing your emails, you can actually have AI even help you write these emails as you're going along. Really does make it a whole lot easier. Now, with your emails, most systems are going to have options. They might be universal for the whole system, or it might be per message, like what you're seeing here, where I can track links, I can turn on UTM codes, I can even add tags if somebody interacts with this campaign. So let's say, again, this is a lead magnet, I'm putting in a PDF, and so I have a PDF link here. And I'm saying if somebody clicks this link, I want them to get tagged as opening the document. I want them to get tagged as accessing the PDF, because maybe I'm going to send them a separate email. And this would be some of those conditions we were talking about earlier, where as you're building this, as you're improving this system, you could start adding conditions like that, where you say, okay, if somebody's clicked this link, I'm going to tag them as opening it. And then I'm going to have a split. I'm going to have a condition where I say, if they've opened it, send them this email. If they haven't, remind them to open it. Send them a reminder email. That's a perfect set of conditions. And we do that quite often. That's how you can do that in High Level, is with this add tags. In systems like Keep, they have an option where you have a selector, a link selector, and it will say, if anybody's clicked on any of these links in these emails at any point, move them to the next step. So it's a little bit different, but still very possible. And most systems are going to work in one of those two ways. They're either going to have an option to say, at any point, if somebody clicks one of these links, move them to the next step, or they're going to have this tagging option. And as soon as someone clicks a link, you can tag them and then force them to the next step through that conditional logic. So that's pretty typical. All right, the next item here is preference type, and this kind of has to do with selective opt-in and opt-out, and this is a newer feature in High Level. This is pretty common in HubSpot. They do a lot with this, where you can say an email is transactional or marketing or that type of thing, and people can select which types of messages that they want to receive. And then, of course, you can send yourself a test, and I highly recommend you send yourself a test of every single email before you publish, and here's the publish button, before you publish your workflows. Super valuable in every single system you will use. You will always be able to send yourself a test message, and there will always be an option to publish and unpublish your workflows. So you can work on them over time, build on them, test them, publish them, try them out, turn them back off. There's options for those things. You're not kind of stuck. It's not a one and done. All right, so let's just say I built a very bad email, but I have built a delivery email. So there we have it. We have our email. Now, the next thing I probably want is an internal notification at some point. So I am going to add a quick internal notification. And this is going to also be an email. I don't need to put in the from or to or from name here. In most systems, you won't need to. You'll have some sort of default set up. You'll have to put in a subject line. You have the option of choosing from templates, but once again, you can just type in a message. And this would be a great use of these tags, where you can say you have a new contact and you'll put in the person's name and then actually put in any sort of information you have on them. And you'll see how this looks. Name, email, phone. Maybe we also want to put in, you could put in their date of birth if you've collected that. But if there are any custom fields that you've added, like what industry they're in, you can actually put that in too, and you can keep adding these fields. And this is an email that will go to whoever, and actually I didn't select a user type. I am going to select a particular user, and I'm going to put myself in there. There we go. I can select myself. So I am now going to get this notification saying that there's a new user. So I'm going to save. So you see my workflow is building. I have the form is submitted. Instantly a tag is added, instantly a delivery email goes out, instantly I get a notification saying I have a new contact. Great. There's an example, and I'm going to save my changes. That is an example of a very basic workflow. One trigger, 3 actions. I don't need any conditions. I don't need anything else at this point. That is one way to get started with a workflow. Now, from here, I would say most lead magnets should have a follow-up series. And one of the simplest ways that I usually describe this, and I was literally saying this earlier today in a meeting that I had, if you have a PDF that describes the 5 best ways to do something for your ideal client, your follow-up is probably going to be 7 emails. You're going to have your delivery email. Then you're going to have 5 follow-up messages, one for each of your 5 points. And it's that simple. You don't have to overthink it. You just have to send a message every 1 to 2 days reminding them of, hey, did you get to point number 1? Here's what's most important about point number 1. Hey, did you get to point number 2? Here's what's most important about point number 2, etc. And then you want a closing email, that final step. And all along the way, you should have CTAs in your email. Those are call to actions. So if that's booking an appointment, that appointment link should be in every email, even if it's just in the PS. And then at the very end, there should be a very specific call to action. Leave nothing to ambiguity. You should be saying, here's what I can do for you. Here's why you should contact me, or here's why you should take that next step. So you have your intro or delivery email, you have your 5 steps, and then you have your summary and conclusion email. It's kind of like writing a college paper, only you do it over 7 emails. Now, the way you would do this, first of all, let's say we would add a wait step, and I would label this wait 1 day, and I'm going to change this to wait 1 day. And you can see it's just a time delay, and I save that action, and that's how it looks. And now I can put in another email just like I put in a delivery email up here. In fact, I can even copy this action and move it down here and then make changes. And you see now I have follow-up email number 1, and I can just change the content in that. And I would just keep copying these until I have follow-up email 2, 3, 4, 5, and then closing email. Now, this is how you can see my workflow is quickly getting longer, but it's not complicated. It's still fairly simple, fairly straightforward. And at some point in this sequence, I also recommend you add a newsletter tag. You should be sending a regular newsletter at least once a month. If somebody is in an initial sequence of, say, 7 emails, or I even know some people that do sequences up to 21 emails, you may or may not want them to get that newsletter, that monthly newsletter or weekly newsletter, whatever you send. You may want to be strategic about when they start getting it. By having a workflow like this, it allows you to be very strategic about when they get that newsletter. If it's only 7-day sequence, I might choose at the very end of the 7 days to add that tag for newsletter. You can see I'm naming my action, I put in the newsletter tag, and I save. So now at the end of whatever my sequence is, I add the newsletter tag. If you have a longer sequence, like a 21-day sequence, maybe you want to add it at the end of the first week, so that now that they're getting the newsletter as well as those follow-ups. That's your choice. Every time you make a change, you want to save changes. And then when you're ready, you would publish this. And it's just flipping the switch and saving again. Now that you've seen the basic structure, I want to talk about how you can scale your business with workflows and automation. And I'm talking specifically about things like lead scoring, pipelines, smart lists, and full utilization of a CRM system. Now, the good news is that I have full-length videos on each one of these things. So you don't actually need to worry about these today if you're not ready for them. You can always come back, and I will link to all of these down in the description, so have no fear. If you are ready for them today, I highly recommend you go down and you take a look at the specific videos that I'm talking about. I will also link to a full playlist at the end of this video, because these are the next steps. These are important if you want to keep growing and scaling and not having to add staff. But again, for those that are just starting out, just know that they're here for you in the future. Now let's move on to the mistakes and things to avoid that I promised I would cover. All right, so I have 6 mistakes and things to watch out for that I think are important for anyone as they start building workflows or even as they're scaling their workflows. Some of these are absolutely for scaling. So the number one mistake is overcomplicating before you fully test it. And I think this is even more powerful right now with the age of AI. AI can sometimes make us feel really smart and tell us we can do things that actually aren't possible. Before you start automating something, make sure that you truly understand the process that you have in mind. Hopefully you've done it manually at least a handful of times. And as you start to automate it, make sure you test it along the way. Mistake number 2 is not having a clear goal for your workflow. And I'm not necessarily talking about a technical goal, but even just an idea of what is the purpose of your workflow. Because anything that we build should have a greater purpose if we're trying to scale our business. If the purpose of your workflow is to save you time, okay. If the purpose of your workflow is to book you more appointments, you need to know that going in to make sure that you have that built into your emails, built into your process, built into your exit strategy for that workflow, that when somebody does book the appointment, they're removed from the workflow. Which of course brings me to mistake number 3, and that is not having conditions or exit strategies. Making sure that you understand your workflows, and that if the goal of your workflow is to get somebody to register for an event, for example, make sure you don't keep reminding them to register for an event that they've already registered for. I could see that being a real big missed opportunity. You're sending me messages that I'm now going to start tuning out and realizing that you don't have things dialed in. Mistake number 4 is something I addressed when I was demonstrating how to build the workflow, and this is poor naming conventions. You really want to make sure all of your naming matches. And if you have multiple lead magnets, please, please, please name them drastically different things so that you don't get confused. If you find you and your team getting confused, that is a sign that your clients, your leads, whoever, are going to be 10 times more confused. So if you have a program that you're trying to sell and you have a lead magnet under the same name and a review or an assessment under the same name, if you have 3 things with the same name and they're just different levels, you might want to reconsider, because this is the stuff that will cause confusion. Somebody will go, no, I already have that, thinking that they already bought the program when really they did the review or the analysis instead. So naming conventions are important internally and externally if you want to keep things really organized and scalable. Mistake number 5 is documentation. And I actually haven't touched on this one yet, but this comes down to the idea of when one automation feeds the second automation, which feeds the third automation, and maybe the fourth automation is the exit strategy that takes everybody out. Those triggers, those actions need to be documented somehow. Now, in high level, you have the ability to put sticky notes and actually say this automation is canceled out by this other one, and even put a link in there or explain what it does, or maybe say that this needs to be turned off on this date and turned on this date. You can leave notes in Keep automations as well. But in some other programs like MailChimp or ConvertKit, they're a little more simplified in the way that the automations work and the way that the canvases look. And so you might actually have to put those details in the name of the automation, or have a document somewhere else where you have links and kind of a description of how things feed into each other. Because when you have 5 automations, it's simple to keep track of. But I guarantee you, once you start getting the handle on this, once you start getting the hang of this, building more automations, you're going to end up with 10, 20, 50 really quickly, because automations are powerful and a lot of them feed into each other. So you're going to want to keep track of, okay, this process has 6 steps to it. They're all separate automations. Step 4 takes them out of step 1, 2, and 3. You're going to want to have that documented somewhere and make sure your team has access to it as well. And maybe it's video documentation, not written documentation. Whatever works for you, just make sure you have that documented somewhere. All right, and mistake number 6 is not building automations at all. If you think that you need a 10-step process before you can build an automation, then that's a mistake. You don't. You can make an automation with just 2 steps. I showed you a very basic automation where somebody fills out a form, they get tagged, and they get an email. That's it. You don't have to do anything more complicated than that to get started. I think that as you get in there and start thinking about your processes, you're going to add more steps naturally. But that's okay if that evolves over time. I actually think it's better if that evolves over time versus trying to build all of that out of the gate if you're not confident in it. Marketing automation does not have to feel overly complicated. It just has to start. If this video helped give you any sort of insights or confidence into that, that was the goal. And if you're still not feeling confident, or you want somebody to take a look at your workflows and automations, maybe even at your processes before you start building them, that's something we do on a regular basis. There's a link below in the description to book a consultation. I'd be happy to chat. And if you're ready to take your automation ability and workflow processes to the next level by giving high level a try, remember, my affiliate link is in the description. It costs you nothing extra. You get a 30-day trial instead of a 15. You also get our templates and some other migration guides and bonuses. And of course, it helps us do what we're doing here by creating these free resources for you. So like the video if it helped, leave me a comment if you have a question. Let me know what sort of workflow you've either recently built or plan on building in the future. And be sure to subscribe for more tips and advice on marketing automation. Thanks.